What if Nebraska had a drinking contest at home games? Would that be a good idea? Friday mailbag next.
You are Locked On Nebraska, your daily Nebraska Cornhuskers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Good morning, and thanks for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome. It's a Friday mailbag. Connor Happer here, Mitch Sherman there. And Nebraska has a game tomorrow night at the Rose Bowl, 8 o'clock on Fox. For those of you who are making your way out, good luck. We are in a tricky travel situation at the moment as far as planes are concerned. So especially to a major place like Los Angeles. So good luck out there and travel safe.
I heard that the reduction is 10%. The eventual reduction in, or I didn't hear this. It's not like it was a rumor. Right. It was reported on the news this morning that the eventual reduction. I mean, if the government could get back to work, that would be nice. But if it stays as is, it would be 10%. And that a lot of the airlines were saying that it wasn't going to be a big factor this weekend. So I don't know. That's conflicting from maybe some of like the on the ground reporting. And we know too that Nebraska was waiting to find out yesterday if its charter plane would be affected by the lack of working air traffic control folks.
I've heard from some people who are heading out who have already, sort of had times kind of bounce around a little bit. So yes, gotta be nimble, I guess. And like I said, good luck and stay safe out there. All right, here we go. Let's get to the mailbag on a Friday. Here is Matt in Omaha. I'm not sure if this has been covered, but do you think that that some of the reason that Nebraska is in so many close games from Rhule speaking it into existence? He always talks about how he tells the team and coaches on a weekly basis the next game is going to go to 4 quarters down to a 1-score game, etc. Like, for example, do you think Curt Cignetti is telling his team this every week? It always comes back to him. He says, hell no. He's probably telling them if they play to their potential, they'll destroy whoever they're playing. That's my hunch anyway.
Yeah. I feel like we've discussed this at times this year, and it is something that has come through my mind.
That's real. I think it's real. Like I have an answer to this. Like, they have been overly conservative, especially offensively. There's been at least 3 different games this year where they've had a chance to just stomp somebody out, and they weren't aggressive enough. It's not the fact that they didn't get it done. It's the fact that they weren't aggressive enough. And they just passed on the opportunity and punted it down the road. And so, yes, I believe that they have spoken this into existence. Now they're also just not that much better than anybody else. So their margin for error isn't very big, but they are like their goal is to be in these games, and they have succeeded by being in these games. But I don't know that it's been completely necessary all the time.
There's a win the game in the fourth quarter, not the first quarter kind of mentality that is bred into Rhule's system. And he believes, I think, that outweighs the benefit of pouring it on in the first half, which is a weird thing to say. I think you can do both of these. I think you can marry that system a little bit better, marry those two philosophies. Like, we want to come out with our hair on fire. You've seen that from great teams over the years, teams that are just on the rise. Like, they are the it team in college football. Like, they bury teams right at the beginning. And we're not saying that Nebraska is in a position to be that kind of a team in college football, which is Indiana right now. But you can still have that mentality a little bit more than what I think we've seen from Nebraska, which takes an NFL approach. The NFL teams, few and far between, win games in the first quarter. And that's largely the path that Nebraska is following. I think that's just Matt Rhule. Like, his teams have been defensive driven, and then he was an NFL coach after that. So it's what comes with this with this system, this program, this regime.
I think Nebraska should take a more college approach. I think they should take it. They should have taken it this year, and I think they should take it, next year. And also the other thing about Indiana, people always bring Indiana up. Like they are push pedal to the metal all the time. They are relentlessly. I was actually thinking about this morning for some reason. They are like just relentless executors. Like coaches always talk about how, hey, we just didn't execute, and we say, well, that's Coach Spigo, and you kind of roll your eyes, they didn't execute. Like Indiana, all they do is just execute, just over and over and over and over and over and over and over again, and they do it aggressively. So yeah, that's what they've created a nice little gap for themselves. Let's go to Brendan. Listening to the show yesterday got me thinking about a funny idea. You guys were talking about revenue from alcohol sales. What if Memorial Stadium could come out with a statistic for beers per recruit and put it on a separate section on the scoreboard? Fans could keep a live tab on how much their purchases affect revenue share or NIL, whichever category this would be under. Hypothetically, if a stadium did this, do you think it would affect alcohol sales and crowd atmosphere in the stadium?
Hypothetically, you're going to end up with a lot of really drunk people in the stadium. I don't think. Look, there's beer sales, and then there is encouraging irresponsible drinking. And if you are being told if this is even real, it's a funny idea, as Brendan said, but we'll answer it seriously. And if you're being told, go drink more beer because it's going to help Nebraska get recruits, or you're representing recruit A, B, or C, somebody out there is going to take this too far, and you're going to end up with a lawsuit on your hands about how they were telling you to get drunk and counting the number of beers that fans drank. No, it's not a good idea. Enjoy your alcohol responsibly.
And I do hear, like, there's no counter or anything like that. There's no like number that flashes on the scoreboard, but Nebraska has certain items available in the stadium that, a percentage of it goes toward name, image, and likeness. So
including beer.
Yes. I see people buy beer all the time, and they're like, oh, nice, helping out the NIL,
yes, that's fine.
Whatever. Like, that's cool.
Scoreboard for it. Different story. Yeah.
Passing a very different threshold at that point. Here's Greg in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. Hi, fellas. Can we ever be relevant without beating the USCs, Iowas, or Michigans of the world? He says, I don't think so.
I don't think so either, Greg.
I don't think so either.
You have to beat good teams in order to be a good team. Nebraska can't just rack up wins against Michigan State and Northwestern, which are good programs in their own right. But if you want to be relevant on the national scene, I assume what you mean is in contention for the college football playoff. We talked yesterday about how the college football playoff should not be this thing that's way up here that you see as unattainable. Like, it is attainable for 20, 30 programs right now. So strive for it. That's relevance, in my opinion. And you're not going to get there if you don't beat other ranked teams or other teams with a vision to get to the playoff.
Yeah, I totally. I mean, you need to you need to beat good teams. You need to have good wins, no doubt about it. Here is Joe in Eastern Oregon. Just with Ja'Cory Barney not being very active lately, do you think he's maybe a little dinged up? P.S. Mitch, working my entire life in the wine industry in Napa Valley, I need to ask which wines are there behind you in your rack over your left shoulder?
Yeah, I never really noticed. I mean, I noticed. I know it's back there. I'm sitting in a bar area, bar space in my basement, and that stuff is kind of on display. That stuff is kind of like the wine that you put on your counter. I mean, you may be able to see there's
a little show wine.
There's some booze back there over my right shoulder. That is the harder stuff. The stuff that I drink, that we drink, I think is probably more down here in the cabinet below and in the fridge over here to my right. But in the interest of answering your question, Joe, I did check this morning, and I'm not the wine drinker in my house, sadly. That's more my wife. That's more my son. No, it's more my wife. And and it is sad because my father was also lifelong in the wine and liquor industry, so he did not pass down his love of great wine to me. So there is There's a Bordeaux wine, a red wine from France that's back there. I have here's a California wine, a Chardonnay, Menage a Trois 2022 variety. I've got another Chardonnay. My wife likes Chardonnay. This is a Monterey J. Lore Chardonnay. I've got a Wonderland project. This looks like a Pinot from Sonoma County. So right in your area out there where you used to work, Joe. And then Enfield Winery from California. And the last one is, I don't know. This is a French wine, Gerard Bertrand, a rosé. So there you go. That's what's in my rack.
Now I should have known that Joe was out in the Napa Valley before I went out there a couple weeks ago. Same thing. I didn't even think about Vincent Napa. We'll get a question from him a little bit later on as well. But lovely.
You tried some nice wine. Are you a wine drinker?
Well, not like commonly, but if I go to wine country, like I'm gonna wear the hat. You know what I mean? I will do as the Romans do, and I was doing as the Romans were doing when I was out there a couple weeks ago.
Can you get like, did you ask for a pour? Like hey, I want to try your wine. Do you get mad like Paul Giamatti in Sideways and dump the jug of wine on the floor, or dump your head into it because they didn't give you a big enough? I've not spent any time in Napa. So that's my vision of it right there. I figure that happens every day.
I tried to keep it super low key. Like, I understood that I didn't know what I was doing. So not, ask very generic questions and don't make a scene and dress normally. Right. I just try to blend in.
That whole movie is about making a scene.
Yeah.
The question from Joe, is Barney a little dinged up? Yeah, I think so. I mean, he got dinged up in the season opener against Cincinnati. You saw the low tackle. And I don't think he's been 100%. He's been very good at times, but I don't think he's been 100% since the beginning of the year in August.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. Hopefully that is a reason why he gets tackled so easily, because I can't figure it out any other way. But yeah, I do think he's just a step, different, and they haven't figured out the right place to put him in this year, which is disappointing.
Should we take a break and then come back with Patrick and Pilger?
Yes, we should. We love Patrick and Pilger.
All right, wonderful. Let's do that, and we'll come back after this.
Hey, it's Friday, which means it's almost the weekend. Time to look back again and recognize an MVP on who delivered this week, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order. This guy delivered when it mattered the most. It is Vincent Shavers who delivered in a big way last week as a part of a solid defensive effort from his linebacker spot. When the pressure was on, he came through. No hesitation, no delay. And if you've been watching week after week, of course, you know that this was not a fluke. Vincent Shavers is on a streak. And just like he delivered for Nebraska, DoorDash delivers on your Saturdays. With DoorDash Streaks, you save every Saturday you order and stack it up all season long. You can save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday and keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period through November 18th.
All right, welcome back. Friday episode, Locked On Nebraska podcast. Mitch Sherman, Connor Happer with you. We go to Patrick in Pilger. He says, looking at the current situation with the offense going into the final 3 games, is it fair to say the success of this stretch falls on the Nebraska defense? What I saw Saturday against USC was impressive, and I don't believe that the defense is getting enough credit. Can this defense take the performance up a notch and support the team to get more victories?
I think that is accurate, Patrick. I think you got it. I think you got it nailed. Nebraska's going to have to lean into the fact that you don't necessarily have to have less points on offense, but I do think you're probably more apt to go into a little bit more of a shell and keep it on the ground a little bit more, which will shorten games a little bit further. So yeah, I think Nebraska's defense is going to have to absolutely continue to be what it's been. That's a defense. There's tons of consternation about the run defense, and I get it, understandably so. But they know what they are, and they know what their shortcomings are, and they know what their limitations are, and they have identified what they're good at, and they have totally steered into that, which give credit to John Butler. I mean, he has created a nice defensive identity for him this year. And once they get the requisite, bodies that they need up front on defense, man, they got a chance to be really good.
I really thought this was going to be the year at Nebraska where success was determined by the offense. It looked like with Dylan Raiola coming back and some of the shortcomings on defense, that this was the year where Dana Holgorsen, where Nebraska was going to be it's driven offensively, and it hasn't happened. And when it does happen, if it does happen at Nebraska under Matt Rhule, it will be the first time in Matt Rhule's coaching career that it happened that way with the offense. He has always been a defensive driven coach. Those are the way that his teams have unfolded as seasons have gone along, if they've not been built that way from day one. So yeah, I with a backup QB, I think you lean even more into that.
Yep. Here's Bill in Minden, Nevada, not Minden, Nebraska. Who was the worst backup quarterback that had to play for the Huskers when the starter got hurt? I actually did like an exercise similar to this yesterday on my show. We did the quarterbacks above replacement thing that we mentioned a couple of days ago. I can't remember who. I decided that Latif is probably going to end up being like closer to the top.
Oh yeah.
I can't remember who he said the one of the last guys was.
Well, the guy that comes into my head, and it's not his fault, but he was number 3 at the time. Andrew Bunch started for Nebraska.
Bunchy's close to the bottom, yeah,
against Troy in 2018. Scott Frost's first year, a game that Nebraska lost. So I'd probably go there in putting him at the top. Some of that he gets penalized because of the players around him, and Nebraska just wasn't very good that game or that season, first 3 quarters of that season, because it was starting something new with Scott Frost and Adrian Martinez, a true freshman. It was all on him. So when Bunch came in, yeah, that was pretty rough. He was the first walk-on quarterback, like walk-on at the time of his start, to start a game at Nebraska since Monte Cristo is before your time, Connor. Monte Cristo, dad of Drew Cristo, former Nebraska baseball pitcher. I think Drew was done last year. So yeah, Monte Cristo started in 94 when you had the was it 94? Yeah, you had 94 was definitely when you had the injuries with Tommy and Brooke.
Right.
Matt Turman started the Kansas State game that year. Actually, you might say that that's also at the bottom of the barrel in terms of worst backup to ever start a game for Nebraska. Matt Turman it was limited in what he could do for sure. You had Riker Fife, who started a game at Purdue in the last decade. So there've been some doozies.
Every year, it pretty much never fails. Nebraska at some point needs their backup quarterback, whether it's for entire games or stretches of games or stretches of seasons. We say it at the beginning of every year, and then we forget about it, and it always smacks you in the face when it comes up. Speaking of wine, here is Vince in Napa. He says, I hate to link the Scott Frost and Matt Rhule eras, but I hearken back to Nebraska's 3-point loss against Michigan in 21 when the home crowd was electric in a similar fashion to what it was on Saturday. Thereafter, I remember the Huskers going on the road to play Minnesota, and it looked like they had pancakes for breakfast. They looked pretty flat. Nice. In your eyes, does this version of Husker football have the emotional maturity to flush Saturday's disappointing finish against USC?
I think so. I think the questions about Nebraska's maturity and culture are all answered. And I get it. Look, they've played 9 games, and in one of those 9 games, Nebraska looked like it had no answers. And it's an outlier. It's an anomaly, I believe, at this point. I think we'll look back at this season and you'll say, man, that Minnesota game, that sure was a dog turd. But
the big dog turd. But people don't forget, Mitch. People that game will just stick in your mind, because it's in your bag. And so I agree with you. I think they do have the emotional capacity to sort of rebound from this. I also think you've been granted sort of a refresh this week a little bit with new quarterback and the different sort of directions. So I think that should help get them in the right mental space. So I agree with you, but I don't blame people for just, it's in there. Once it's planted in your mind, you can't get rid of it.
I think the TJ Lateef situation and having a new quarterback, while it is not for the better of the Nebraska program to lose Dylan Raiola, I do think that it's going to sharpen the focus of the players around him. When they're getting ready for the game on Saturday, I think they're going to be locked in a little bit of a different way because of the knowledge in their mind that they have to do everything that they can, which is for TJ, which has been the message from Matt Rhule since Sunday.
One more before we take a break. Here is Brett in Windsor. Despite all the bad that transpired in the past week, fans should keep their heads up. Nebraska's bowl eligible. I know this season isn't over yet, but what kind of growth can we expect to see from this team to 2026?
Well, it's going to depend on some important things. Is Emma Johnson coming back with this team? How can Nebraska reload some things and build up both lines of scrimmage? So you're going to want to continue to take the steps that Nebraska did from year 2 to year 3 in the foundation, like what the program is built on. And I think that should be doable from year 3 to year 4. You may have a little bit less turnover between year 3 and 4 than you did between 2 and 3, because it is roster wide a young team, and there's not going to be as many cuts as you saw in the previous 12 months as a result of reduced roster size. Like, that stuff is fairly set. Also, it's a small recruiting class coming in. So you should have a lot of stability. Presumably the quarterback, Dylan Raiola, is going to be healthy in February or March at the latest. And it's his junior season. It's presumptively his last year in the Nebraska program. It's now or never for Dylan. I mean, he could come back for a 4th year, but the idea is to get him to the NFL after next season. So schedule toughens up a bit, but I think you're going to want to look for growth in the areas that Nebraska has shown it this year, and the big thing being to beef up their play at both lines of scrimmage through the transfer portal and somewhat through development this offseason.
It's always so hard to tell, just because, even though Nebraska is, like you said, Mitch, in a situation where they're probably not going to have like an extreme amount of turnover this offseason, you never really know until you know. And, when they all come back in January, that's when you kind of know when you have on your what you have on your team. Yeah. And so then you devise a plan and a formula from there. But as far as like the base and the standard and the culture and all that stuff, like that's built. That's in a really good spot, and you just keep, putting things on top of that and see if they stand.
And the other thing this year, you say when they come back in January, the portal is a January thing this year and not a December, January thing. Right. So all of that, it's going to be a little bit later on the calendar. Still want to have those guys on campus by the time that school starts in late January, and I think they, for the most part, will. But just as far as the process of getting the portal going and the news coming in, it's going to be more condensed to the month of January. So you're almost going to be at the end of January before you really have an idea of what the roster truly looks like for 2026. Okay, we'll take a break. We'll come back with one more from up in Canada, our friends in Windsor. That's next. A message right now from SupplyHouse. When the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with SupplyHouse. Order today and see your parts on the doorstep tomorrow. More than 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. SupplyHouse has real inventory and honest lead times that keep you from punting projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. If you need parts fast for a project, SupplyHouse has next-day delivery. That's a game changer. The Parts Finder tool and 3D schematics can save you hours on the job, where every detail matters. Join the free Trademaster program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and a dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free. Use the promo code SHCollege5. That's SHCollege5 for 5% off your first order. Supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service.
All right, here we go. Final segment on a Friday. Let's get to all your guys' questions. Scott and Windsor, let's set aside the offense for a moment and talk about the defense, especially on the defensive line. I'm not a college football head coach or a defensive coordinator, but I like to play one on podcast mailbag episodes. Nice. When will this coaching staff realize that unless you have a first-round nose tackle, a three-man D-line just does not work in the Big Ten? This isn't just a USC complaint. It's almost every opponent the last 2 seasons. Am I wrong, and why?
Yeah, I mean, Nebraska would like to have a first-round nose tackle. Nebraska would like to have a, just give him a Ty Robinson, who's a mid-round defensive tackle, and they'll be happy. I mean, think about the difference that he's made, his absence has made this year, Ty and Nash. But Ty was a difference maker on a level as a senior that Nebraska is sorely missing this season. So they will look for that player in the portal. There's a great story out on ESPN.com this morning by our good friend Max Olson, who wrote about what Texas Tech did in the transfer. You want to know how teams really make a difference with NIL money, and I know that most of you listening understand what Texas Tech did in the portal last year with its seemingly endless revenue stream, but Max wrote a story about how it played out in real time and what James Blanchard, their general manager in Lubbock, did to get David Bailey, the big time pass rusher, future first rounder, not a nose tackle, but an impact defensive lineman. And not just Bailey, but Tech went out and got 3 defensive linemen in the portal that they paid upwards of $7 million for in the last offseason. So Matt Rhule's great friend in Lubbock, Texas, Joey McGuire, the head coach of the Texas Tech Red Raiders, and Blanchard, who was a staffer for Rhule at Baylor, they're getting it done on a level that Nebraska needs to strive to. So you're right, Scott. No one is debating the fact that Nebraska needs to find a way to get better up front on defense. And to do that, if you're not developing those players in your program, and Nebraska's trying to do that with Riley Van Poppel and Williams Winery and Keona Davis. But if you want immediate help, you got to go pay big bucks. And that's the bottom line.
I actually think a 3-man front for this team, especially against like a USC, is not the worst thing in the world. You're trying to disrupt a little bit because that those guys aren't just going to hold and get through. Against the Northwestern, against an Iowa, I think you'll see Nebraska play a lot of 4-man front. And you got to try and stand up physically to that. But a team that's going to spread it out a little bit, you're trying to cause some chaos up front. So it's situational, and that's what this defense gives them the ability to do. Here is Adam.
I got one thing. Can we get some clarity from Scott and Brett, our last two mailbag questioners? Can you tell us? I mean, I know they're related. Is this father-son thing? Are they brothers, cousins? Just would like to know what we're dealing with here on that. By the way, while we're talking about Windsor, Ontario, here is our international map as we stand from Nathan the Map Maker, and then here's our domestic United States map. Funny, Windsor should be on this one because Windsor is technically it shouldn't, but it's south of Detroit, so that's a weird little geographical thing. But thank you, Nathan. There's your maps if you're watching along on YouTube.
Love it. All right, here we go. Adam in Colwich, Kansas. There's a lot about this UCLA game that I don't like. They're talented and athletic with a mobile quarterback that gets to play at home, coming off a bye. Meanwhile, Nebraska is a backup quarterback starting his first game 2 time zones away, coming off an emotionally draining loss. My question is, if Matt Rhule can guide this team to a win this weekend, where would you rank the win versus other wins at Nebraska? I think there would be a solid argument for being one of his best.
Yeah, what's Rhule's best win? Have we come up with that? I feel like there was a win this year where we looked at it and said that might be his best win.
Maybe the Colorado game last year, maybe.
Yeah. This year, your best win is Northwestern. So yeah, Absolutely.
Well, Nebraska's best win is Cincinnati this year, but
yeah, in terms of record of opponent, like what boosted your strength of schedule the most. To think though that your two best wins, and I get it, that's with the visiting team or the opposing team's record. It's going to be Cincinnati and Colorado, but I mean, they play in the Big Ten. So
I think the game that he's probably let me know what you think about this. This is the closest equivalent to the Illinois game in 23, the week after you got bludgeoned by Michigan.
Yeah,
like coming back off that was a short week that week, and they totally responded. So sort of similar from an emotional capacity. You got to go out on the road, deck stacked against you a little bit. I think it'd be a good win. But with that being said, I know they're slight underdogs. It's a win I expect them to get.
Yeah, to get to 7 wins right now is no small feat. And I'm with you, Adam. There's a solid argument for this being one of his best at Nebraska.
Here's Riley. My social media world is only filled with Cornhuskers, so my view is very biased. Example, the biggest news story of the week has been Rhule. Wow, there's a lot of other news going on. I see a ton about Emmett Johnson and his stats. So my question is, how does Nebraska look on the national scene? Is the national sports media talking about the same things the Nebraska sports media is?
How's your social feed right now, Connor?
It does not. Well, I actually have it back. It's been returned to me, which is nice.
That's such good news.
Yeah, I have been released from Twitter jail. So
is our Locked On feed also back?
The Locked On account should be restored as well. Every single account that I was logged into got murdered over the last couple of days because I was using TweetDeck, which is like a workaround, Twitter feed. Not because a bunch of people like requested that I be banned from Twitter. I saw that after I got back on Twitter yesterday. They were like, "Thank God he's gone." But no, you can't kill me. Only TweetDeck.
So if you're not following us at Locked On NEB on Twitter, now's a good time to go do it because we're back after a 1-day suspension.
We're super
thanks
back.
to Connor's TweetDeck.
The national media is not talking about Nebraska right now because they're not relevant.
And if they are talking about Nebraska, in the only instances of the national media talking about Nebraska in this moment is Matt Rhule and the contract extension that he received last week, with debate about his 18-16 record, and then Dylan Rhule being injured. That was a national story. The injury to Nebraska's starting quarterback, the former 5-star, of course, that resonates beyond Nebraska. Emmett Johnson, no. Having a good season, having a great season. Lots to talk about him in Nebraska. You're right, Riley, but it's not a national story. It just isn't.
Rhule did have a viral moment yesterday when he talked about the Cowboys player who passed away, and sort of used that as a life, kind of teaching moment. So
if you haven't heard that,
talking about,
it's worth a listen. Nebraska's coach talking about the importance of mental health and just checking in on people, and he related it to his team and talked to his players about making sure that when they go to get lunch at the cafeteria or at the training table, like take off your headphones and just talk to the people next to you, ask them how they're doing. And he relayed a story about former player of his, Adrian Robinson, at Temple, who took his own life many years ago. And Rhule gave the eulogy at his funeral and saw Adrian on campus in Philly, after his NFL career, just a few days before his death, and has always wished that he would have just stopped him and talked to him. They were a distance away from each other, and Rhule spotted him. So it's an important message, and that absolutely is something that caught the attention of things nationally. So Nebraska does have a head coach who has the ability, with his words, to get the attention of people outside of the state. And this week was another one of those instances.
Last one, Chris in Denver. Thoughts on Nebraska's strength and agility development? it doesn't seem to get talked about much, and it doesn't seem to be a shining star outside of the 2 games against tomato cans.
Yeah. I think there's some adjustments that Nebraska could probably make. You can always be working to get better. Corey Campbell is, by all accounts, an outstanding strength coach, motivator, leader, person of extreme importance in Matt Rhule's regime. I think they could be doing better with development of big players, of linemen, and specifically offensive tackles, and interior defensive linemen. And a lot of that, of course, is up to the player. But I, from my outside view, believe that they probably could add someone to that staff in the weight room who specifically works. They may have somebody who specifically works with the big guys, but there are former offensive linemen, former defensive linemen, maybe they have ties to Nebraska, maybe they don't, who have specialized and made their careers out of strength and agility development, as Chris in Denver words it here. And I think Nebraska couldn't hurt Nebraska to add that piece to their strength staff. That said, the work, you look at the Nebraska players when they're on the practice field, when they're coming out for games, the impact that Corey Campbell and his staff have made is very noticeable. This is a team that's in good shape, and I think you see it predominantly with the skill players. So
I think it's tough to find I mean, you see these edge rushers on defense in the NFL, and they're just so flexible, and they have such control over their bodies. And same thing with
look at Aiden Hutchinson and what he does. I mean,
those
you
guys
don't just grow those guys. Yeah,
they just bend and twist and move in such interesting ways. It's just difficult to find that size of speed and strength, and then flexibility as well. Mm-hmm. It's the same thing with tackles. So you can't you can't develop the flexibility part. You can't develop the functional kind of athleticism, but you can develop the size and the strength. And I do think Nebraska does a pretty decent job at that, but they need to find somehow, these guys who could just move in different ways, because right now Nebraska takes on the offensive and defensive line. They're a little, they're not particularly athletic. They're a little kind of blocky, So I think
you just think there are a bunch of stiffs out there.
They look not a bunch of stiffs.
I'm kidding.
They look a little stiff. To be completely honest with you, but
not all of them. Williams Winery doesn't look like that. Elijah Pritchett doesn't look like that. But yeah, you want to line them up with Alabama's defensive line, with Ohio State's defensive line, and it's a different looking group.
All right, that's it for us today. Enjoy your weekend, everybody. We'll be back with you on Sunday to break down the UCLA game. Thanks for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen. For your second listen, check out Locked On Big Ten with Craig. You can find that on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.